John Ulzheimer is known as one of our nation's most recognized credit experts. Having worked for 28 years in the credit industry, John has become one of the most prolific speakers about credit and the go-to authority on answers to credit-related questions. Credit Countdown with John Ulzheimer.
Hello, my name is John Ulzheimer, and I am a consumer credit expert. And today I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you about some of the rights that you do have under the Fair Credit Reporting Act versus some of the rights that you do not have under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Normally, when consumers ask me questions about their credit reports, it's usually something to the effect of, hey, how can I get this information corrected? How can I get this information removed? However, I do from time to time get questions from consumers about, do they have the ability to demand that certain lenders report information to the credit reporting agencies, or do consumers have the right to essentially push a button and delete their credit reports? The Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is really the Bible of the credit reporting world, this is the federal statute. It's been around since the early 1970s. It's been amended dozens of times, and it lays out the rights that consumers have with respect to things like the dispute resolution process. You have the right to free credit reports from time to time. You have the right to place a security freeze or a fraud alert on your credit report. And the Fair Credit Reporting Act also protects consumers from unauthorized access into their credit reports because it lays out a series of conditions that have to be met before a company can procure your credit report. So the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or the FCRA, has 90 pages full of essentially language surrounding consumer rights around credit reports. What the FCRA does not have any language about, this issue of the credit reporting system being largely voluntary. So if you think about the credit reporting industry, there's really three parties that primarily are a part of that industry. You have the credit reporting companies like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You have what's referred to as users of credit reports, which is going to be banks, credit unions, credit card issuers, insurance companies. Those are all companies that have the right to pull credit reports and use them for one reason or another. And then you have what are referred to as furnishers. And furnishers are companies that report information or furnish information to the credit reporting agencies. And so that's also usually going to be a bank, a credit card issuer, or some sort of financial services company. All three of those parties that I just introduced and defined are really interacting with each other on a voluntary basis. You, as a consumer, cannot demand that the credit reporting agency delete all of its information about you and cease to maintain a credit report. You also, conversely, cannot demand that a user of a credit report pulls a certain brand of credit reports. In other words, you can't go to your bank and say, I'm going to apply for a loan and I'm going to demand that you pull a credit report from Equifax. You can't do that. They pull a credit report from whichever company they choose to pull a credit report. And therefore, you have very little control over that because you don't have the right to demand, you don't have that choice, essentially. From a more granular perspective, the furnishers, the companies that furnish information to the credit reporting companies, you also don't have any rights with respect to forcing them to do so, meaning that a lender can simply choose to not report anything to the credit bureaus. You also don't have any say-so in the matter with respect to which of the credit bureaus the lenders choose to report to, if they do choose to report. So for example, let's say you have a relationship with a small credit union. Well, the credit union may only report to one of the three credit reporting agencies rather than all three of the credit reporting agencies. With respect to credit scores, you don't have the right to a credit score. There's nothing in the Fair Credit Reporting Act that states that every particular consumer has to be scorable, meaning that they have to have some sort of a number or digit that is essentially your credit score. Your credit score is, and this is both the FICO and VantageScore brands, which is that's pretty much 100% of the score volume in the US market. You don't have the right to force a lender to use any particular score. You don't have the right to force either of those scoring platforms to actually calculate a score on your report. Your report may not have enough information to make it a scoreable file. And of course, you don't have the right to any particular score, meaning you can't go to a credit bureau and demand that you have a score of 800. That's something that you earn based on how well or how poorly you manage your credit report data. Then there's this issue of consistency. I'll give you a great example. Let's say I am added as an authorized user on credit card A, and I'm also added as an authorized user on credit card B. Well, let's say hypothetically that those two credit cards are issued by two completely different banks. Credit card A may end up on all three of my credit reports. Credit card B may end up on none of my credit reports. And other than choosing to do business with certain credit card issuers, there's really little control that we as consumers have over that, because again, it is an entirely voluntary system. Some credit card issuers may choose to not report their authorized users to any of the credit reporting agencies just as a matter of policy, and you don't have the ability under any federal or state statute to demand that information be added. You can certainly ask, but that's essentially what you're doing, is you're asking. You cannot demand it as a consumer right. One of the last interesting things I want to talk about, it's actually kind of interesting, is the companies that use credit reports, so banks, credit unions, credit card issuers, and the like, they don't have a right to a credit report either, meaning that they can't just go to the credit reporting agencies and demand that the credit reporting agencies sell them credit reports. The credit reporting agencies can choose to do business with certain banks, and they can choose to not do business with certain banks. And so when a bank wants to pull credit reports, they are actually having to apply for an account with one, two, or all three of the credit reporting companies. And then based on the information on the application, the credit reporting companies are going to consider the application and then either approve the application or not. And of course, if they do not approve it, then you have a company who may otherwise wanted to pull credit reports, but is not able to pull credit reports. Even if you are able to get an account with the credit reporting agencies, there's no guarantee that they'll accept your data if you would like to furnish information to the credit bureaus. So while it's very common that most users of credit reports are also furnishers, if you think about, think of any mega bank or any mega credit card issuer, they're all users of credit reports and they're all furnishers of credit report data. And in most scenarios, those large lenders report to all three of the credit reporting companies. That's all a matter of choice and certainly not any sort of federal requirement under any federal or state statute. And so I acknowledge and recognize that this can be frustrating to consumers because they have very little control over that aspect of the credit reporting system. They have a ton of control over other aspects as defined in the Fair Credit Reporting Act, but they have very little control over issues of consistency, whether or not your data is updated on a monthly basis, what time of the month your information is updated. You really don't have any control over that. And the reason you don't have any control over it is because you don't have a right to control it under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So kind of a little bit of a buzzkill, but I think it's important for consumers to understand what their rights are. And I also think it's important for consumers to understand what their rights are not. So I appreciate your time today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thanks for watching.
For more videos and credit tips from John Ulzheimer, go to www.tradelinesupply.com.